Hello and welcome to this mini panel discussion looking at the world of programmatic, where we will be debating whether its algorithms are prejudiced against premium news content, as all press titles have been reporting heavily on COVID-19, featuring plenty of terms no doubt blocked by advertisers via keyword blocking tech. The irony here is the usual path for brands is to find large and engaged audiences which newspapers are delivering daily, yet despite this, modern programmatic tech is apparently depriving the news industry of around 50 million in ad revenue if the pandemic lasts until the end of June. That is according to Tracy de Groose, and she is the chief executive of UK newspapers trade group Newsworks. To debate this and the wider implications of whether ad tech is able to make the best decisions for brands, we have Damon Reeve, who is the CEO of Ozone Project, which is a non-profit organisation for news brands to trade programmatic inventory, together with Ricardo, Amboage, who is the head of programmatic and display investment at Starcom. Hello, chaps. Firstly, to understand the issue, Damon, if you can illustrate what is happening and provide us perhaps with the sense of sort of frustration from newspapers, please.
Sure. So in programmatic advertising, advertisers often will use brand safety tools or content verification tools that are essentially text-based, that will prevent their ads from appearing, the advertisers' ads from appearing alongside content that they deem to be not appropriate for their brand. Generally, that works fine. But quite often, with poor implementation, what you find is that advertisers have very long block lists that mean that any editorial that is very text heavy runs a very high chance of being blocked, which ultimately will then push the advertiser's brand into other content environments that are probably less text heavy and ironically, possibly putting the brand more at risk. So the newspapers, so Tracy through Newsworks has been pretty vocal about the topic over the last few weeks, on the basis that news brands are all have record levels of readership as everyone's reading about coronavirus and how to kind of live their lives and what should they do. But if anyone's sort of observed, a lot of that editorial actually doesn't have very much advertising running against it, because a large percentage of advertisers are running block lists that includes coronavirus.
Okay, well, thank you for that overview. Ricardo, as you can see, there's a high number of eyeballs available for advertisers, yet the tech is preventing from these advertisers reaching these audiences. Do you agree that's the issue, and what are the solutions for it?
Yeah, so I agree that there's certainly is an issue and can be an issue, especially in the current environment, around incorrect use of keyword blocking. I think one thing we have to be mindful of is that there's kind of a double-edged sword here as well, in that it's not just the impact of keyword blocking that's probably impacting publishers, but it's also the general reduction in ad spend that a lot of advertisers have had to resort to at this time of crisis. So at the moment, most of the market is seeing this reduction in ad revenue. And when it comes to keyword blocking, it's important to remember it's just one element, it's just one tool in our toolkit when it comes to managing brand risk and brand safety. So we were quite quick to respond when the subject of keyword blocking came up around coronavirus and COVID, where we were asked by some of our clients to investigate it, and our recommendation was not to use it as a blanket approach across everything, for the reasons that Tracy and Damon have mentioned previously. There are other opportunities out there to manage that. So first of all, you can manage it with content blocking as well. So that means that articles that are featuring within, lifestyle, sporting parts of those sites, actually, even if they do mention things like COVID-19, aren't blocked, because you're blocking at the content level rather than the keyword level. And there's other things you can do as well in terms of like transacting more directly with the publisher to make sure only the right type of inventory is coming through as well. So I wouldn't say that keyword blocking is bad and outright, but I'd say that it's got to be used properly in order to make sure that both the advertiser and the publishers get the best out of it.
So do you think that 50 million figure that Tracy quotes is perhaps a little overhyped in order to get the industry to sort of move in her favour?
I wouldn't necessarily say overhyped. I'd say it's very hard to extrapolate what that figure will be, because there's obviously so many other factors at play at the moment, as well as the block rate and the projection in terms of the uplift in terms of impressions. It's really hard to get to a figure, but we know from the actualized data of what happened in the early stages of this crisis that it was having a significant impact on publishers.
I mean, we sorry, I was just going to say, we definitely experienced, from an Ozone point of view, significant blocking that did, off the back of awareness, start to change. And I think that that's where one of the great outcomes of this, where we're talking about this topic now, is an understanding that there is an issue, but it's not specifically caused by the technologies, or it's not specifically because of one particular thing. What you need is a grown-up conversation and a greater awareness amongst brands of how the technologies are used and what the impact is. And so I think that one of the great benefits has been, through that awareness, there actually has been quite a lot of change. That, I think, is probably one of the best outcomes.
Ricardo, you mentioned it earlier that news is seen as a touch risky for brands. What do you mean by that? And what do you encourage brands to do around news content in general?
Sure, I guess, I mean, again, it's not going to be that it's the same rules for everyone, but different brands will have different approaches to how they manage brand risk. So you might have some advertisers that view the specifically news content might be seen as being kind of too hard and too negative in some instances. And we know that through a lot of the studies that Newsworks has done, and also work that we've done with publishers directly, is that actually sometimes that can be quite affecting being in those environments. Mm-hmm. But we do also know that it can be quite divisive. So if you're a marketeer and you've received over the course of the last year a couple of complaints about advertising next to divisive content, and you think, well, actually, to manage that risk so I don't have to deal with this anymore, I'm going to put in place either news blocking or keyword blocking to stay away from that, then that's completely your prerogative. It's probably not what we'd advise in 100% of the cases. But you also have to be mindful of, actually, does that then impact your ability to deliver your objective? So if you're blocking all of this premium content, are you delivering the same quality? Are you delivering the same outcomes as your campaign is set out to achieve?
Damon, in response to that, what do the newspapers do about this sort of polarizing nature of news content that is occurring today in this political world where everything is politicized? Do they, advertisers are perhaps right to be wary of advertising against such material? And what do newspapers, what do they do about that? How can they deal with that problem?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think it's probably true that the world is generally divisive, but I think that if anything, that means that a newspaper is a more important environment for fact-checked editorial that has oversight, to try and get a more balanced view into the world. I think that newspapers, since inception, have all, particularly in the UK, which is a very active news market. Every masthead has its bias, which I think is fairly well understood. But that doesn't mean to say that I think that they're sort of encouraging or driving greater levels of division. I think that they've been great environments right from the very beginning for brands to build awareness and to build brands. And I don't think that today's environment is necessarily any different. In terms of what do editors do about that, the editors should report the news. They shouldn't be making decisions about what editorial they are putting into their papers based on advertisers' wishes. I think that the first and foremost, it's their readers that they care about, and reporting the news. I think from an advertiser point of view, to Ricardo's point about education, there is a lot of research out there that demonstrates the value of a more attentive and engaged audience in quality environments. And it's our job to educate brands and buyers on the benefits of that from a brand building point of view.
Just to add to that, I completely agree that it's usually a very kind of loud minority of people that are making these complaints to brands about where they're advertising. I think the majority of the UK population kind of understand the role that advertising plays in, especially the delivery of online media, but in supporting news brands generally. The other thing is that this is not just a problem within publishing. If you're going to essentially put in place measures to manage risk away from publishers, then you have to apply the same lens and level of diligence on where actually your pound is being diverted to. So long as you can justify that you're actually managing risk in the rest of your buy, if you are taking a pound out of publishers and news brands. So it's important that buyers are doing that diligence as well and understanding where that's going instead, and actually is it, good quality premium sites that it's going to.
So Ricardo, do you have much sympathy for newspapers who decided to perhaps build automated trading buying tools to reduce staff and benefit from being on agency trading desks? But once you do that, you're in the same game as other online inventory, which is all about audiences and data. Is it fair to say from their side that the tech isn't working in their favor now they're in this game?
I mean, yes, I sympathise with a lot of the challenges that are well known. I mean, I think that there was an era where there were a few missteps made, just seeking to make as much money from their online properties as possible. So going back years now, but having increased content, which is just up page impressions, which is clickbaity, loading pages with loads and loads of ads, intrusive ads. I mean, all of that was probably done with just a revenue kind of lens. Whereas now you see that a lot more publishers are trying to improve the buyer experience and also the products for advertisers as well. And I think all of the publishers, especially across the news brands, are very well-meaning when they try and improve stuff for buyers and advertisers, as well as trying to seek to maximise revenue. So yeah, I think that the ambition is all aligned. Everyone's trying to head in the right direction. I think that the key point now is that news brands, if they are going to try and ask for a premium in the market, they just need to kind of bring what their unique advantage is. So whether that's insight on specific audiences, or if that's kind of really rich context in which advertisers want to appear against, so long as they can dial up those advantages, I think that they will get more of that advertising investment.
Damon, do you have a response to that?
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, I think that to the point about, did the papers create the problem that they're kind of experiencing today? I think most of them would agree that they did, but if you wind the clock back 20 years, I don't think anyone really knew how the world was going to evolve and develop from an advertising or programmatic advertising point of view. But I think they did go down the wrong path of creating editorial to capture that one click and with the sort of the headlines, and not think about their readers as being the most important sort of stakeholder. But for a number of years now, they've been turning that ship around. And I think that I've said for a long time that open market programmatic is not a place where premium publishers should be. Premium publishers need to develop direct relationships with buyers, and that's the way that they create genuine value. The open market is for long-tail publishers who don't necessarily have the opportunity to have that direct relationship with buyers. So I think that we're well on the path to doing that. That's why Ozone was created. We have to keep going and kind of keep true to, I guess, reminding ourselves that the reader is the most important person, and advertising is a very important sort of follow-up to that.
Okay, now wrapping up this keyword issue, do you think, just yes, no, do you think we'll see a change here, or is it unrealistic for newspapers to be demanding that? Ricardo, do you see a change?
Yes, I think it's already changing.
Okay, Damon?
Yeah, I agree, it's already changing.
Okay, now Ricardo, you mentioned this at the beginning, that this is part of a wider issue. It's not just to do with keyword blocking. Do you think metrics and how clients measure the success of campaigns play a role in this? Often brands are chasing efficiency targets, especially in programmatic environments. And I imagine Ozone is sitting there at I'm making this up, Damon, forgive me, about a 30% premium, and other options are available there that are heavily discounted. So will price always win that war?
So metrics 100% matter, but I think it's important to realise that CPM is not a metric that any advertiser wants to optimise towards. It's the rate at which you pay, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's kind of the objective in and of itself. So yes, look, you got to think about when you're delivering a campaign, what's it set out to do, and usually that's either to drive reach against an audience, to spread fame, or it's about trying to drive association or consideration, or it's about driving a measurable linear online action, so a sale. And what the efficiency we should be focused on is actually how efficiently are we driving those outcomes, how efficiently are we delivering the consideration metrics, rather than what's the efficiency of the CPM that we're delivering. So yeah, efficiency is going to matter, but it's not just about rate, it's about the value and the outcome.
Damon, you're going to like that response. Ricardo there is saying it's not about cost or CPMs. I'm sure you're going to be delighted to hear that.
Absolutely. I mean, we always say that if unit cost is what matters, then we're probably not the right place for you. But if you're interested in value and understanding value and effectiveness, then there's a conversation to be had. I think it's also worth pointing out on the measurement stuff that we've been pushed and pushing kind of quite heavily around. The Telegraph have had a big campaign for a while now around metrics that matter, and trying to move the thinking away from ad tech and digital metrics like click-through rates and view-based conversions and things that ultimately seem more akin to gaming the system, and more to business level measures of profits and kind of business outcomes, as Ricardo was saying. That is a conversation that actually, when you're talking to CMOs, they're very comfortable and actually would prefer those conversations and feel like the digital kind of teams have largely been sort of, taking the claim for some of the work that some of their other teams have been doing. That's the nature of a media mix. But I think that as a lot of that data starts to go away, we've got to remember that there's still a GDPR and there's still regulatory oversight, and there's still Chrome, which is going to take a lot of this third-party data away from the system. We will be relying in the future on other measures of success. And I think that ultimately is a good thing for kind of most media channels.
And Damon, just very quickly, almost yes/no answer here. Do you spend most of your time trying to convince advertisers and agencies and people like Ricardo to spend more, to be in more quality environments? Is that basically what your job is?
Yes, but I wouldn't say that I'm flogging a dead horse. I feel like it's a pretty active conversation, and it's more about how as opposed to why.
No, that's good. So we have to comment on this. There's a couple of minutes left, and we have to comment on the ISBA and PwC report. And Ricardo, I'm going to start with you on this. You've no doubt seen the results from it. And the report identified a 15% delta, as in they have no idea where that money went. Does that alarm you at all to see reports like that?
Well, obviously the 15% that's being reported is alarming. Anything where you're not entirely sure where the ad spend is going is cause for alarm. I think the positives I take out of it is that advertisers are leaning into these types of insights, and I think as agencies with specialists, we're able to help on a client basis understand how this impacts them, rather than looking as the industry as a whole. I mean, we don't have any clients that were involved in the study, and I've not had a chance to review any data or any methodology, so I can't really comment on the 15% number itself. But I'm glad that advertisers are leaning into this, and we're working on client-specific projects at the moment to make sure that we understand the same level of detail.
When you see stuff like this, do you actively encourage brands to move into safer environments? Because bear in mind, this report was based on an analysis of the most premium of inventory and ad tech out there. So do you actively push clients to move into, let's say, safer programmatic environments?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably been a progression that we've been on for a while. I mean, the industry itself has seen a reduction in the amount of the percentage of investment that goes through open marketplace over the last 4 years anyway, 4 or 5 years, towards more direct solutions, whether that be private marketplaces, guaranteed deals, or other setups. So it's certainly our approach is to try and, where possible, have a relationship with all parts of the ecosystem. That's not just the DSP that you're buying from, but also the ad tech that sits in between, and also the end publisher, because that way, collaboratively, everyone gets a better product.
Okay, Damon, you can get the final word on this, and I want you to level with me, right, and have a real comment on this. And I know it's difficult for Ricardo to comment on, but why is the industry so surprised at this report? This is something that's been going on for years. Come on, everyone knows it. Are you really surprised to see these findings?
I'm not surprised to see the findings. I think the best thing about this report is that it was primarily advertiser funded, with participation from the advertisers and the ISBA and the AOP, which means advertisers and publishers are both engaging and collaborating to get an outcome, rather than relying on tech vendors for providing solutions. And it's not to beat the vendors up, but the vendors are supposed to be working for advertisers and publishers. And it's clear that just the difficulty PwC in actually putting this data together is astonishing. And the one bit that, as opposed to the 15%, the most astonishing number for me out of this is the fact that the average number of websites that the campaigns that they surveyed were running across was 40,524. That's the average number. I mean, I don't think I've ever visited 40,000 websites in my life. Like, I just think and coming back to the original conversation we had about the misuse of brand safety tools, if you block quality editorial environments that have governance, and you push your budget into long-tail environments, I don't know what these 40,000 sites are, but if it was my brand, I'd be concerned and I'd be asking questions.
Well, it's a good way to end it on. I believe on average, most people go to about 7 different websites at most times. So I don't know where those 40,000 come from. Gentlemen, I'd like to thank you both for your time and your insights. We could have gone on for a lot longer. Thank you very much. And I look forward to catching up with you guys in the near future.
Great. Thank you.